Today we're going to be talking about confidence and self-esteem and the challenges to those that living in today's very, very fast-paced world presents.
Welcome to Profile 3 TV, and we continue our business leaders videos, and today we're joined by Kathryn Thompson, who's a life coach. So Kathryn, thank you very much for joining us today. If you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit more around what you do. So you're a life coach, so you help people with problems in their life or achieve their potential.
In terms of coaching, I not so much. I tend to think of coaching as working more with solutions rather than focusing on problems. So my role is really to help people identify where they want to be in life, what it is they want. Then we look at where they are now and see where the gap is. So it's not so much fixing something that's broken, it's around making something that's already good and whole, or a person who's already good and whole, even better.
Yes. And do you think a lot of people need help in their life? So I know personally from my own experience that there's so many things that I would like to change, improve, things I do that I would prefer not to do. Do you think that's a common trait that many people have?
Yeah, the thing about it is you don't see your life when you're in it. It's very difficult to get a big picture view of your life when you're caught up in the day-to-day, in all the day-to-day minutiae of what you're doing. And I often think as a coach, really, my role is more like the helicopter view. So an analogy I often use is if you are driving a car, you are necessarily focused on the road ahead. So you're looking straight ahead. So you can't really see things like, off to the side or in the distance or perhaps far behind that might impact on that journey. If you have a coach sitting beside you, they've got a bigger picture, so they can actually say, well, actually, there's maybe a better opportunity down that road which you were just going to drive past, or, there's something behind there which I think might have an impact on where we're going. So that's really the role of a coach. So in that respect, everybody can benefit from it. It's not so much, counselling has a very, very real and important place when people are having to work through crises or deal with something or face something that they've never faced and healed, and counselling is really important for that. But where I would differentiate and where I think coaching comes in after that, when you're into the rebuild stage.
Very good.
So it's about creation and forward thinking and what it is that you really want. And that sounds like an easy thing to define, but quite often if you ask someone what do you want, they're like, well, I don't really know, because it's what you want as opposed to what other people want for you, what society wants for you, what your employer wants from you. And very often that's a powerful question, is just to sit back and listen to what someone says when you say, what do you want?
It could even be your friends or family, even what they
Yes,
want.
yeah,
Parents.
yeah.
Parents can have a big influence on people as well. What they want for someone.
Yeah, that's the thing, because we all, we carry not only our own expectations, but we carry societal expectations, family expectations, peer group expectations. So sometimes it's about pulling all of that apart, pulling all those away and thinking, well, underneath all of that, what is it that's important to me? And once people get clear on that, the path ahead becomes much, much clearer.
And do you think people have a perception of getting help, reaching out to someone like yourself as a life coach or a someone to help them with their personal development? Do you think there's a bit of a stigma around that, or fear?
I do, actually. I think, and I think particularly in Northern Ireland. I mean, you know, in the States and other, it's very much, you know, you have a coach for everything. You have a dating coach, a nutrition coach, a personal, you know, trainer coach or whatever. So I do think, and it is this thing of keeping a stiff upper lip and, you know, I'm fine and, you know, I need to be strong, I need to cope with this on my own. But actually sometimes the strongest thing that you can do is to reach out for help.
Yeah, fine is never good.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
everything's fine. That's not a good sign, I
Yes,
guess.
exactly, exactly. So I do think there's a little bit of resistance and a little bit of stigma, and I think it's, you know, it's interesting because people will spend a huge amount of money escaping.
Amazing, yes. Didn't think of it that way. You're right, yeah.
You know, when you think of, like, for example, if someone is, you know, and I've been in parts of my life where I'm, you know, overwhelmed by things, maybe not very happy or whatever. So, you know, people will spend like a fortune on a weekend away or a night out or clothes. They're all escaping. Now, that's not to say all of those things are escapism. They're not. They're pleasurable things, and we work toward them, whatever. But, you know, there are times when people would say one of the things is, well, I can't afford that. But they will spend a lot of money escaping.
Yeah.
And health sometimes.
Yeah, very good. And do you think that it can influence people's personal and work life, or it's all?
Well, I think, again, you know, as a coach, we don't really differentiate to a huge extent because it's part of the holistic package. So, you know, when I'm working with someone, you know, I'm looking at like, oh, every part of your life impacts on another part, and there's a very sort of generic coaching exercise, which is a wheel of life exercise where we quite literally draw a chart with different segments representing, say, your work life, your finances, your family life, your health, your environment, your spiritual life, if that's important to you, and literally score them on sort of 1 to 10 on the wheel, and that gives a very instant graphic representation of where the imbalances are.
Amazing. I'm just thinking if I was to do that now, I'd probably...
Most people, and it's a very simple, very generic exercise, and it's something that is useful to revisit every so often because, again, you've got to look at everything. It's almost like we're like little mini, you know, ecosystems. And they talk about change has to be ecological. So if you change one part of a system, it can have an impact on the other parts. So you've got to be mindful of that. But very often, you know, when I've had people say to me, I remember working with one executive, and we were looking at really what was important to him, you know, what his core values were, and what came out as being very important to him was family, was home, was all of these things, but yet he was working about 80 hours a week. So there was a huge imbalance there. And the question that I often ask people, you know, once we've kind of elicited what their values are, like what is really important to you. And again, that's something, until you give yourself the space to step back and look at it, they can become buried under everything else. And, you know, when you do take that step back and you look at something, you think, oh my gosh, that is really important to me. And, you know, the question that would follow that is, well, if that's important to you, would I recognise that by how your day-to-day life is?
Amazing. So again, I'm thinking, you know, even my own personal life, it gets faster, seems to get faster.
Everybody's the same, Kieran.
Business seems to get harder or busier, and things just seem to be going like, and there's constant change.
Yes.
Constant change. Technology's changing faster for everything.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes there's overwhelm.
Yeah.
And I think back to even my childhood and or young times when we didn't have social media, and life did definitely, from memories, seem a lot more simple and easier. And I think of young people now growing up and they're in this system already, and growing up, the pressures, it's probably only going to get tougher. Maybe we're going to have to get used to this, as opposed to the simple life. It's hard to unplug sometimes.
Well, I think that's the difficulty, and again, why, because part of coaching is being accountable to somebody. So, we all know, and we were speaking earlier about what we should do, but again, sometimes having someone to whom you're accountable for doing that, who is just holding your agenda and nobody else's, can be very powerful. And I agree. It's like this, like almost cognitive overload. There's so much coming at us all the time, and I think I read somewhere, and I'm sure there'll be people watching or listening who will be more expert on this. But I think that I read somewhere about the conscious mind is only really capable of holding about 7 sort of bits of information or ideas, in one go, like plus or minus 2. So when you think about how much is coming, it's very, very difficult then to differentiate what's important from what's just background noise, if you like. And that's what overwhelms people. So we're almost constantly in this state of overwhelm. So it's about that sort of ability to step back and take a look and say, well, what is important and what's not important? Because everything that comes at us very fast and instantly, and that in itself creates an urgency that may not actually exist.
It's like a little wheel going round and round. It just seems to get faster and faster.
Yeah.
Even I'm thinking of sitting watching TV. You're sitting watching TV, but you're also on your phone.
Yeah.
And you're checking Twitter or sending emails.
Yeah, and that just confuses your head, because there's been a lot of work done about this whole thing about we all laugh and say, oh yes, women are great multitaskers. Nobody's a good multitasker, because in actuality, when it's broken down and they've like studied this and looked at it in slow motion, nobody really multitasks. They sequentially task, and they sometimes sequentially task very, very fast. But it just confuses your brain.
Yeah.
So it's no wonder that we're all walking about, in big bubbles and in a complete muddle, because there's just too much, because the focus is gone.
Yeah, incredible. So what does a life coach do, or what's the relationship look like? Is it person to person? Is there phone calls? Email?
Well, I work in different ways, and I know we've just maligned technology and how it's overloaded all of us, but actually very much of my work is done via technology. So for example, Skype, I have clients I've coached in the States. I had a gentleman in Australia, and it's all done via Skype. I also do one-to-one and telephone coaching. I find if it's somebody local, the combination of one-to-one and telephone is very powerful, because quite often at the beginning of someone's coaching journey, we'll do sort of a few one-to-one sessions, and then because my interest is in moving them on as quickly as they need or as they want to move on. So I have no interest in having someone come to see me week after week after week. My success is whenever they don't really need to see me very often. So usually when I start with someone, we'll maybe do a weekly or even a twice weekly session to start with, and then spread things out. So that can be the first few sessions can be in person, and then we do almost like little lightning telephone sessions.
Very good. And do you find that there's a common problems that society or a lot of people here are facing at the moment, or everyone has got different problems?
I don't think there's any problems that are unique or new to humankind, truthfully. They just come wrapped up in different circumstances for people, and then also they carry their own particular personal challenge with that. I'm trying to put words around this, but we're all products of our genes and our environment. So you can have a really difficult set of circumstances, and someone who perhaps has had an upbringing or a life that makes that set of circumstances much harder for them than it would for someone else. But and again, I think, you know, what I see much more, I tend to, many of my clients, I seem to sort of get a lot of people with its confidence and self-esteem issues, which is very, very interesting, because those were the things that I struggled with for years and years. So I can really identify with that. I think that those have become magnified now for people because of what we were saying earlier, because of this fishbowl of social media, the kind of celebrity culture, and it's all not good enough. So that is something that I come across a lot, is not being good enough, not being far enough on in their life. You know, how do you measure that? That's a very, but you're measuring that by looking at someone else and going, well, I'm not where they are. That I hear that a lot from people. Well, I would have thought by this age I would have been further on. So that the self-esteem, the confidence, not being as far on, and really people don't recognise their own gifts and their own achievements sometimes. So that would be very, very common.
It's incredible to hear that. So basically, I'm wondering again, even myself, you're describing me to a certain extent.
So that's what I mean. That the commonality of this, this is, you know, it's common to humankind. We all, you know, like
similar problems. Yeah, similar mindset.
Yeah.
So it's like I haven't achieved enough. I haven't been successful enough.
Yeah. It's like how big a stick do you want to have, and how often do you want to beat yourself with it?
Amazing. And then that's exactly what people do. That's what we do.
Yeah.
And then it's very interesting you're talking, as you say, the self-esteem and confidence at the moment, because we would be trying to get a lot of clients to invest in video.
Yes.
And put themselves on video to promote their businesses, because video now is starting to dominate content marketing.
Yes.
It's a really good way to promote your business. As you can see, we're doing something similar, but you'd be shocked or surprised maybe how many business owners do not want to.
Well, I am not shocked or surprised at all, because this is a big challenge for me. I will write and talk to people one-to-one. I will, you know, do workshops with groups, but this is a challenge for me, so I understand that, because it taps into every insecurity, and everybody has them.
It's incredible, and I'm not gonna, don't tell anyone, but I'm the exact same. I don't. It's like
we all put on very good masks.
It's amazing, isn't it? The pressure.
We all get out there and we put on a really good mask, and you know, that's fine. But sometimes what you need to realise is what's under the mask is even better than the mask you put on. And the sad thing is, most of us don't realise that.
Incredible. Very good. So if someone did have self-esteem or confidence issues, then you try and work with them through that. You try and get them to understand what's holding them back, and encourage them to move through it.
There's a little bit of that, and also understanding. One of the things that goes hand in hand with that is, you know, speaking to the point we made a few moments ago about not being far enough on in life. If you're holding a limiting belief about yourself, or you have a confidence issue, you will only let yourself ever go so far. So even when the opportunity may present itself to go further, there will be some reason, very largely unconscious, where you will self-sabotage or hold yourself back. So we'll never go further than the image of ourselves we carry in our heads.
So it is really important that we have a positive, successful image. We don't beat ourselves up there.
Yeah. You know, I often see it like really our challenge as adults, or our journey, is to journey back to how we were as children before all the scripts started running. Because children don't really have confidence issues. Young children. You know, a child will try and walk, and they'll crawl, and they'll cruise around furniture, and they'll do all of that. And they will do that for as long as it takes until they walk. They don't think the first time, I'm really rubbish, this is no good, I can't do this, and sit down and never walk again. So, you know, in a way, what we need to do is to give ourselves that permission, the permission that we had as children, to be curious, to play, to explore, to try, to fail, to try again.
It's like society has all these boxes or barriers. You're totally right. The child isn't sitting there thinking someone's going to see me fall.
Yeah, this is going to end up on Instagram. I mean, that's all. They just don't have that, and they live in a very immediate world.
Very good. And you mentioned at the start of our conversation help. So all of this, I guess, does have an impact on health and people's health as well.
Yeah, well, again, that's all kind of tied into like we're talking about this like holistic wheel of life, and health is something that many of us do take for granted, and it's only when something happens that you realise what a gift it is, and how important it is to look after it. And again, there are many people playing, almost Russian roulette with their health, and it's very much in that, must do, short term gain, short term thinking, rather than looking at the bigger picture and the long road. Because we're all going to be working till we're much older now. And what's people work and they say my retirement, whatever. But if you're sort of staggering into your retirement, with heart disease, diabetes, maybe a stroke under your belt from all the pressure, it's not going to be great.
No, things aren't going to be good. So I'm going to have to hit the road again this evening. That's it. Back in the treadmill.
Yeah.
back to. We were talking about resilience earlier. And I was asking, how do you show resilience? But you explained to me that it's actually...
Well, resilience is really more, it's an attitude of mind, and it's a kind of way of thinking and a set of behaviours. And, I was thinking about this, and I think resilience and courage are two very close cousins. And I've been called in my life to be quite courageous at times. And people say to me, oh, you're so strong. How do you stay so strong? I think, well, I don't really know, because I don't know any other way of being. And again, when I thought about it, well, what do I do? Because it's around, like, I suppose, modelling things, isn't it? Modelling certain behaviours. And a little bit to what we were saying earlier, living in the present moment. And I think when things become really, really tough, you need to pull back from all but the most necessary things. So allow yourself to drop certain things, drop certain projects, whatever. And it is quite literally pulling back into the present moment and taking a day at a time, which is a very, very cliched. But it's cliched because it works.
It does work, yeah. I can definitely vouch for that, because I would find myself at end of month, it goes crazy. We're trying to shift projects and everything else.
Yeah.
And you're totally right. You just have to prioritise and let things slide. So it could be a week and there's no emails answered, but it's part of the...
Well, something like that. You know what? If it's really important, they'll send you the email again.
And phone and text.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And our own minds can be our greatest, our greatest gifts, but also our worst enemies. I can't remember again. I know somebody who will listen or watch it and correct me. I believe it may have been Mark Twain, but I'm not sure. Said that his life has been filled with disasters, 9/10 of which have never happened.
Very good.
And that, and again, when we are in a difficult place, for some perverse reason, in our heads we tend to make it even worse. We if we're down one difficult road, then in our heads there seems to be some perverse thing that do you know what? Well, this could get even worse.
What if?
Yes.
What if? That's I actually two words I tend to hate is what if.
Yeah.
That's it. Because you're right, you're normally following that with something that's very negative, and why would you waste time and even thinking about it? Just like you say, deal with what you have and see what happens and go from there. Resilience and even the confidence, is that something that children have, you think, or we have to...
I believe that they do have before they become programmed, conditioned, absorb all of the kind of scripts, etc. Because again, looking back to the example we used about children learning to walk, you've got to be very resilient. When you think about the learning process of a child, there's a lot of resilience, and it is very much about taking judgment out of it, because I think that's what can really negatively impact on someone's resilience, is judging ourselves as we go along.
And
so if you take the judgment away, well, I'm not good enough, well, I should have been able to do this by now, again, you're being kinder to yourself.
yeah, of course. And learn to walk is not an easy thing, and
No.
the amount of time it takes a child to understand and be able to do it, and also they can't even talk about it.
No, exactly.
It's incredible.
But they stay
the
with it, they stay in the moment, they get up the next day and they try again.
Amazing.
So we can all learn so much from children.
Yeah, and something actually when you talk about this, it's skills we all had but
yes,
lost
exactly.
or forgotten.
And that's when I'm working, when I'm working with people, particularly around confidence and self-esteem, so often it's just bringing them back to the person that they truly are, because it's all there. So there will have been times when someone has shown incredible confidence and their self-esteem has been very intact. So it's still there, but perhaps it's been chipped away by life events, by dealings with different people, but everything is still there. So really, part of my role in working with someone is to take them back to find that again, and then bring it back into the present time.
Very good. And a resilient personality, then, you think that's someone who is courageous or has courage to deal with what they're faced?
I think that their courage is part of resilience, because sometimes, when you have courage to do something or say something, you know that you're going to have to be strong to see it through. So I do think they're related, but you don't necessarily have to be courageous to be resilient. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand. I definitely understand. And when things get tough, as they often do, today, tomorrow, maybe 5 times of the day, is there strategies or techniques that people should use, or is it?
Well, I'd be very, very reluctant to use the word should, but things that do help are, again, that chunking things down. So, consciously slowing things down, because when we get into that sort of fight or flight mode, we speed things up. So it's consciously slowing things down, so slowing thought processes down, looking at what's really important, what's not so important. It's definitely having, keeping human connection. And when I say human connection, I don't mean emails or instant messages, whatever. I mean real life talking to people, because none of us is an island, and I think that's one of the greatest weapons, if you like, against being overwhelmed, is having a network and talking to people, and keeping that connection there, because isolation, whenever someone is going through something difficult, there can be a sense of being very, very isolated. So having that connection is really important, and upping the self-care a little bit, and again, that is counterintuitive, because when things get really difficult, the first thing we tend to neglect is ourselves. So it's like, well, do you know what, I'm not bothered, not eating properly, not sleeping properly, maybe, drinking too much, whatever. But those are all human things to do, and they're all things that humans do. But bringing a little bit of consciousness to the fact, well, actually, this is quite a difficult situation. And something that I mentioned a bit earlier there, and I think it's so important, is stop judging yourself, because that's just adding difficulty to an already hard situation. Sometimes we have to give ourselves permission not to have it all together. Is to say, well, do you know what? I don't have everything together at the minute, and that's okay.
Yes, just
It's giving yourself that permission. You know, particularly times, you know, I remember going through a period of deep, deep, deep grief when my younger sister died, and for about 3 months, all I did was I went to the gym in the mornings, and I came home and I cried most afternoons, all afternoon. And I went on for weeks and weeks. And I kept thinking, I wonder when this is going to stop. I should be, and so much in those afternoons it would be, well, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, I should be productive. Productive is a word, you know, I should be productive, I should be this, I should be that. But that's the place I needed to be, and that's what I needed to do. And once I'd done it, it passed.
Very good. And I've noted down here you refer to should be a lot. Should be is a very tough word to use, then you think? Is
I think we were talking about that a little bit earlier, and in coaching terms we talk about shooting all over ourselves. And, you know, if you take shoot out of your vocabulary and replace it with want, you know, what changes? Because, you know, again, we were talking earlier, and I think that a lot of the shoulds are the external things. It's what we think is expected of us, or, you know, what we expect of ourselves in order to fulfill one of our roles. But it may not be actually what you want.
Exactly. My example was I should be going to the gym.
Yeah. And I said to you, do you want to go to the gym?
Actually, I don't.
Well, so there you go. So there's no point in putting a lot of effort. So if you were to come to me and I was coaching you, there'd be no point in us looking at ways that we could fit the gym into your life. You know, what you're going to, because you don't want to go.
Don't want to go.
So it's never going to work.
No.
And that's okay.
That's I'm so happy we had that chat, because that's been on my list for I don't know how many years. So it's off the list.
It's not, and like, you know, again, we and I know I'm a bit the same, but we tend to think in all or nothing. And again, as a coach, what I'm trying to do and work with people is to sort of think, well, what's the middle ground? So, you know, using the gym as an example, it can be, well, all is I go to the gym 5 times a week, I eat a really, really healthy diet. Nothing is I never do any exercise, I pig out on pizza and beer every night, and I become hugely overweight. It doesn't have to be either or, but we tend to think in those very kind of binary black and white terms.
Very good. I'm with you, and actually, the gym, exactly what you say is in my mind, is 3 to 5 days a week. You're pounding it and killing yourself.
Yeah.
Whereas I'd be quite happy just in the middle of the road and keeping both sides. I'm just wondering how many other should be's I have on my list.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be very conscious of that now in the next couple of days to see what else I can take off my
it's a
should be
really
list.
Interesting exercise, you know, because it's a word that we just use so unconsciously and so habitually. And it could be that you need to delve deeper into the picture of what that thing looks like. So again, using the gym as an example, you know, well, the picture you have is that it must look like this. Well, maybe if the picture looked a little bit different, it would be more appealing to you.
Yeah.
So what picture do you need to create that's going to be appealing to you and engage you?
And then maybe the should disappears and it becomes a want.
Yeah.
Excellent. We talked about the perfect life. I guess is the Instagram and the Facebook and the social media. You think it puts a lot of pressure on people then?
I think it does. I mean, I know even for myself, I think apart from the fact that it's overloading us, you know, our senses are overloaded, our brains are overloaded. I think there's almost like this little fishbowl, and we're looking at things that are perfect, but they're not really perfect. And measuring ourselves, even if we're not consciously comparing ourselves, I think there is a tendency to look at something and go, you know, mine's not as good as that, or I don't look as great as that. And you know, for young people, I know that it's a huge worry.
And just to jump to another point, you've actually written a book and it's available in Amazon and Kindle. I've
been posting little bits of writing on Facebook for quite a number of years, and have had very positive feedback. Quite personal stuff, but I think there's a lot of power in sharing our stories. I know for me, writing is a way of helping me understand and process things. And I started to share a few things, and the response was really quite overwhelming. I think part of the reason for that is that people realise, well, they're not on their own, because most of the problems and challenges, different things, most humans throughout their life, we all encounter the same kind of big things to deal with. So people realise, well, I'm not on my own with this. And also, when one person shares a story, it gives other people a chance to do the same. And simply speaking something out loud and not carrying it inside is incredibly powerful. So and I had people say, have you got all of these wee bits and pieces, together in a book? And I thought, well, again, limiting belief. I thought, well, I couldn't write a book. Like, who am I to write a book? I'm just a wee ordinary person from Belfast. And I had the encouragement of a successful author and speaker who really pushed me very hard on it. So I put all the writing together, what I have at the moment, and published it in an ebook last year called The Warrior Within. So I think that's why the whole sort of thing of resilience and courage, I've been called on to find a lot of it, an awful lot of it in my life, and I do believe we all have it. So that's really what the book's about.
It's just finding it.
Yeah, and it's just there's little pieces on sort of different subjects, really. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for coming in and talking to us today.
Not at all.
I've learned a lot.
Good.
Hopefully changed a lot as well.
Yeah.
I was going to say
Pleased to hear it.
I was going to say should be.
Yeah. We don't allow should. We don't allow should.
I'd be in trouble. Excellent. No, thank you again. So if anyone wanted to talk to you a little bit more, or actually read some of your readings online, or actually get the book, so where's the best places for people to find you?
Well, the book is on Amazon. The Warrior Within, Kathryn Thompson. It's on Kindle as an ebook. Excellent. And Facebook, I'm just on Facebook as Kathryn Thompson. I do post a lot there, and phone or email. So kathryn.thompson6@icloud.com, and phone number is 07885 669 286. And I'm quite an old-fashioned person. I like the human connection. I like to talk, as you've probably gathered. So yeah.
It's been excellent. No, really, really helpful, and gives me personally a lot better understanding of what I need to be looking at in developing myself. Yes, I have a long way to go.
You do.
Yeah, it's going to be a long day. Well, excellent. Thank you for joining us today. That was a really interesting chat, and no doubt we'll have to read a lot more, and I need a lot of practice. So we're coming from the Innovation Factory here in this Springfield Road, and my name is Kieran, and I'm from Profile 3, the content marketing agency. Look forward to seeing you in the next video, which hopefully will be tomorrow. Thank you.